Hi, this is Emily from puttylike.com, and today I'm going to answer a question that I get asked a lot. What is a multipotentialite? A multipotentialite is someone with many interests and creative pursuits. It comes from the word multipotentiality, which is a term in psychology used to refer to people who display aptitudes across multiple disciplines. Some other terms you might be familiar with that kind of connote the same idea: the Renaissance person, the polymath. Barbara Sher wrote a great book called Refuse to Choose, and she refers to us as scanners. Multipotentialites exist on a spectrum of simultaneous to sequential.
The difficulty with me is that I'm interested in so many different things. I can never really imagine myself doing one thing, and I'm pretty sure that I'll end up doing 4 or 5 different things. I want to be a Renaissance woman. That's my thing. I want to paint, and I want to write, and I want to act, and I want to just do everything.
Raise your hand if you've ever been asked the question, what do you want to be when you grow up? Now, if you had to guess, how old would you say you were when you were first asked this question? You can just hold up fingers. 3, 5, 3, 5, 5. Okay. Now, raise your hand if the question, what do you want to be when you grow up, has ever caused you any anxiety? Any anxiety at all? I'm someone who's never been able to answer the question, what do you want to be when you grow up? See, the problem wasn't that I didn't have any interests, it's that I had too many. In high school, I liked English and math and art, and I built websites, and I played guitar in a punk band called Frustrated Telephone Operator. Maybe you've heard of us. This continued after high school, and at a certain point, I began to notice this pattern in myself, where I would become interested in an area, and I would dive in and become all consumed, and I get to be pretty good at whatever it was. And then I would hit this point where I'd start to get bored. And usually I would try and persist anyway, because I had already devoted so much time and energy, and sometimes money, into this field. But eventually, this sense of boredom, this feeling of like, yeah, I got this. This isn't challenging anymore. It would get to be too much, and I would have to let it go. But then I would become interested in something else, something totally unrelated, and I would dive into that and become all consumed, and I'd be like, yes, I found my thing. And then I would hit this point again, where I'd start to get bored, and eventually, I would let it go. But then I would discover something new and totally different, and I would dive into that. This pattern caused me a lot of anxiety for 2 reasons. The first was that I wasn't sure how I was going to turn any of this into a career. I thought that I would eventually have to pick one thing, deny all of my other passions, and just resign myself to being bored. The other reason it caused me so much anxiety was a little bit more personal. I worried that there was something wrong with this, and something wrong with me for being unable to stick with anything. I worried that I was afraid of commitment, or that I was scattered, or that I was self-sabotaging, afraid of my own success. If you can relate to my story and to these feelings, I'd like you to ask yourself a question that I wish I had asked myself back then. Ask yourself where you learned to assign the meaning of wrong or abnormal to doing many things.
So you've explored poetry, painting, photography, and music, in addition to acting. Which art form is your favorite?
You know, I don't really separate them. They're all the same thing. You know, I don't think children separate different artistic, they don't separate themselves either.